Okay, on to the next track in Campbell's Melodic Kingdom series, man, by Campbell Cravens. This song over here is called Kenji. Also Fort Minor, staying within that 2.5 album 2.5, The Rising Tide. This one, the message over here is Kenji is the story of Mike's grandfather as a Japanese immigrant during the World War II days. This song is even more culturally relevant after the release of the Oppenheimer film. Damn, I still need to go and see that damn film. I can't wait to go see that damn film. But, okay, let's rock and roll, man. Let's see what this is about. And for those of you who want to know more about the custom series, link is down in the pinned comment. You can click on that and go take a look. Kenji, Fort Minor, let's see what we got. I definitely have not heard this before.
My father came from Japan in 1905. He was 15 when he immigrated from Japan. He worked until he was able to actually build a store.
Let me tell you a story in the form of a dream. I don't know why I have to tell it, but I know what it means. Close your eyes, just picture the scene as I paint it for you. It was World War II when this man named Kenji woke up. Ken was not a soldier. He was just a man with a family who owned a store in LA. That day, he crawled out of bed like he always did, bacon and eggs with wife and kids. He lived on the second floor of a little store he ran. He moved to LA from Japan, they called him immigrant. In Japanese, he'd say he was called Issei. That meant first generation in the United States, when everybody was afraid of the Germans, afraid of the Japs, but most of all afraid of a homeland attack. And that morning, when Ken went out on the doormat, his world went black, cause right there, front page news, 3 weeks before 1942, Pearl Harbor's been bombed and the Japs are coming. Pictures of soldiers dying and running. Ken knew what it would lead to, just like he guessed. The president said the evil Japanese in our home country would be locked away. They gave Ken...
That's crazy, man. The fucking Japanese with the internment camp days. Right? It's mad. I love pieces like this, which is like kind of storytelling as well, specifically on like a true story where it's kind of real life. Mad. It's crazy that you actually would have American citizens that would then go and be put into like internment camps because it's just like the hatred. They never did anything. They're American, right? They never did anything, but they would actually be put there anyway.
3 weeks before 1942, Pearl Harbor's been bombed and the Japs are coming. Pictures of soldiers dying and running. Ken knew what it would lead to, just like he guessed. The president said the evil Japanese in our home country would be locked away. They gave Ken a couple of days to get his whole life packed in 2 bags. Just 2 bags, couldn't even pack his clothes. Some folks didn't even have a suitcase to pack anything in, so 2 trash bags is all they gave them. And when the kids asked Mom, where are we going, nobody even knew what to say to them. Ken didn't want to lie. He said the US is looking for spies, so we have to live in a place called Manzanar, where a lot of Japanese people are. Stop it, don't look at the gunmen. You don't want to get the soldiers wondering if you're gonna run or not, because if you...
Ooh, man, that's insane actually, to think like the Germans were doing this, were doing this themselves, but then in the United States they did that as well, right? And it was all just because of hatred, right? All because of hatred. There was absolutely no reason to do that to their own people, specifically, just because they're Japanese and they're in the United States. Surely the CIA had enough intelligence, right? They know everything about everything, those guys, right? To know that the people weren't involved and whatever else. But yeah, man, it's crazy to see how evil humanity can get.
The gunman, you don't want to get the soldiers wondering if you're gonna run or not, because if you run then you might get shot. Other than that, try not to think about it. Try not to worry about it being so crowded, but someday we'll get out. Someday.
As soon as war broke out, the FBI came and they just come to the house and you have to come. All the Japanese have to go. They took Mr. Need and people couldn't understand why they had to take him, because he's just innocent laborer.
So now they're in a town with soldiers surrounding them. Every day, every night, we're down at them. From watchtowers up on the wall, Ken couldn't really hate them at all. They were just doing the job and he wasn't gonna make any problems.
The wherewithal to actually think like that when you're in that kind of situation, where you're like, well, I can't actually hate the individual, I can't hate the soldier, right? Because the soldier's just doing what he's told. But that is actually the problem. That's the entire problem with the system, is that is how we get people to conform, through fear, firstly, and then obviously through taking orders. Like, you know, you turn the like human beings into machines, very much like Charlie Chaplin once wrote in one of his pieces. You know what I mean? And that's what happened. So to a certain degree, it's hard to not blame them. It's not hard to not blame them seeing what's being done to their fellow humans and not being able to stand up against it. You'd think and you'd hope, but then again, you look at what happened in Germany with the Holocaust and all of that kind of thing, and how people actually just followed. The system is very powerful. The system is very strong. And once that system is constructed to move in that mechanized fashion, right, people are too scared to stand up, because them standing up would mean that they'd lose their life, right? So it took a very, very, very brave individual, which most people aren't, right, to actually stand up for what is right, for what is good, and not just to follow, because the majority of humanity will follow, right? And that's why when you think about, like in the Holocaust, like would I be one that would stand for something? Because everyone today stands for everything. You know, everyone's so righteous today. Everyone's so fucking good. You know, these virtue signaling people, you know, if they were back in the 14th century and they were back in the 15th century, slavery would never be a thing, right? Because they would be standing up, right? They would be the virtuous. It's very easy to say slavery is bad when you're no longer in that time anymore. Yes, well done, Sherlock Holmes. We know slavery is bad, right? We've progressed to this point. We know that, right? We know that the Holocaust was bad, right? We know that colonialism was bad. Right? To sit there and be on a soapbox and stand on a soapbox now and scream to people saying, oh no, you're colonial. Oh, shut up. Please shut the fuck up. Can't stand those whiny little bitches, man. I can't stand them. Yes, we know it's bad, right? You're living in the freest society you've ever lived in ever. You've never had to go through any of those troubles. Your ancestors and everybody before you, right, paved the way for this life for you. Right? For you to sit there on a fucking soapbox and tell us how bad slavery was. Yes, we know how bad slavery was. We know how bad the Holocaust was. We know brave men fought and died to get us out of that fucking situation, out of that system. Right? For you to come years later to take a break from watching your Netflix and playing TV games and being utterly fucking useless, to come outside and shout to some random person that you're better than them because you know that slavery is bad. Yes. Well done, bro. Well done. You know what I mean? So, yeah. So, it's crazy. But again, system was fucking strong. And that's why when people say, you'll have people who's like, I could never do that. You don't know, man. You don't know. Lots of people that actually followed the system were actually good people. Were people who didn't particularly agree or didn't agree at all with the actual system, but they were actually too scared to go up against the system. And then as it went on and on and on and on, they got caught up in the system, and they actually became part of the system pure to their silence, right? The biggest problem is the people that sit on the fence, not the people that take a side. If someone takes a side on this side and they stand up for something, they'll be heard and they might be killed, right? That's the sacrifice you take. Or you in the system. But if you sit on the fence, that's the most dangerous, because everybody sits on the fence. And if everyone sits on the fence and no one talks, right? Imagine everybody that's sitting on the fence, which is the large majority of people, if they all rise at the same time. Those things would never happen. You would never have things like the Holocaust. But the problem is the majority of society will sit on the fence because they don't want their immediate life to be in any which way turned upside down. That's the way it works. And you're actually starting to see it today as well, where the silence from the large majority of people towards things that they know that is absolutely evil and wrong is criminal. And it's happening right now. We know the difference between reality and we know the difference between delusion. We know the difference between right and wrong. The vast majority of people are partially educated and can understand and tell the difference between right and wrong, and reality and delusion. But yet somehow we play into this delusional game anyway. It's like out of compassion. It's like, oh no, it's okay, you know, but live and let live. And it's like, no. They are completely trying to overwrite truth. And if you don't stand for truth, you stand for fucking nothing. You know what I mean? So you can see it. You can see it today, and it happens. It happens through civilizations, and civilizations will go through these decadent eras, and then they'll collapse, and something else will rise from their ashes. We're there.
Day every night we're down at them. From watchtowers up on the wall, Ken couldn't really hate them at all. They were just doing the job, and he wasn't gonna make any problems. He had a little garden, vegetables and fruits that he gave to the troops in a basket his wife made. But in the back of his mind, he wanted his family's life saved. Prisoners of war in their own damn country, what for?
You see, over there, I'm not saying like when I actually said it initially is like what the Germans were doing in their own country, America was doing in their country. It wasn't the same, obviously, because the Holocaust and the concentration camps in Germany were a very, very different story to the internment camps in the United States. But it was still very wrong, and still very wrong to imprison your own citizens just purely because of their ethnicity, right? For something that they never did. It's just purely out of hate that you're actually doing that. I don't think they got treated in any which way, anywhere near comparable to the way people got treated in the German thing. So that's to clear that up, right? But I'm saying just in terms of creating that system to manage people out of hatred, where the systems were alike. Maybe not in its brutality, but the systems were alike in both countries.
His family's life saved. Prisoners of war in their own damn country, what for? And time passed in the prison town. He wondered if he'd live it down if and when they were free. The only way out was joining the army. And supposedly some men went out for the army, signed on, and ended up flying to Japan with a bomb. That 15-kiloton blast put an end to the war pretty fast. 2 cities were blown to bits. The end of the war came quick, and Ken got out big hopes of a normal life with his kids and his wife. But then they got back to their home, and what they saw made him feel so alone. These people had trashed every room, smashed in the windows and bashed in the doors, written on...
It's crazy because however you feel about the nuclear, you know, that's nuclear weapons and whatever else, I think eventually someone was going to have the nuclear weapons. Someone was going to create. The Germans were already working on the nuclear weapons as well, and so were the Soviets at the same time. So it was literally a race to nuclear weapons. Eventually somebody was going to get to the nuclear weapons, right? Was going to develop that technology. And America, just because of their economic might, they put a lot of resources into that, and they got to it first, right? With the Manhattan Project. But the thing is, you know, a lot of people will talk about the morality of it, and it's like anything. If you're not there, if America didn't get to it first, whoever did get to it first would have used it on America. So it was kind of like imperative that they got to that technology first, right? There's questions on whether, should they have used it against Japan? America being the only country that has ever dropped nuclear weapons on a civilization. Yes, there's the moral standings for that, right? There's the moral standings for why couldn't the Americans were already doing like a massive bombing campaign outside of using the nuclear weapons already, right? And was it a sign of weakness or was it a sign of strength that they actually, just to say like, okay, well, our conventional military was not good enough to beat the Japanese because they were a great military power at the time. Was the only option was to drop 2 nuclear weapons on this was not even talking about we're not even talking about military targets. We're talking about civilians. Like they just dropped them on cities. Do you know what I mean? And America is the only one to do that, to ever have done that. Do you know what I mean? So it's a hard one. It's a hard one to actually sort of mull over from an ethical standpoint. In terms of, was it necessary to use the weapons? Was it necessary to get to the technology? Yeah, probably, because everybody else was going to get to that technology eventually. But was it necessary to use it on civilians? I'm not entirely sure. Probably not. I mean, let's say that They did because they wanted to send a message, as America always wants to send a message. But then all outside of that, like the Bikini Island testing and what they did to the natives there, purely for testings and stuff, that stuff was just fucking terrible. Do you know what I mean? So, but yeah, as for the nuclear weapons, in terms of them developing, eventually everyone was going to have those nuclear weapons. At the end of the day, everyone was going to have developed that nuclear weapon, and it is a deterrent. Make no mistake, right? This mutually assured destruction is a deterrent because the world has been in relative peace for close to like for over 80 years now. The world, I mean, there has been wars here and there. But if you actually go and look, like you can actually see there's a graph. Like from up until World War II, there was just conflict. Well, up until World War I, conflict. And then after World War II, after the Manhattan Project and all that kind of shit, the world was actually at relative peace. Like there was a lot less conflict, right? And that came from the nuclear deterrent because major powers wouldn't go up against each other anymore because they might as well nuke themselves. Do you know what I mean? Because it's like if you attack me, I attack you, and both our countries go. And the thing is that even if they suspect, like you're going to, if one missile gets launched, the reason why you get the domino effect is because if the other country doesn't use their arsenal, they'll lose it. That's why that mutually assured destruction is such a powerful thing, in the sense that it actually stops people from sending even one. There's no such thing as, like, you know, you hear this on the news now, you know, oh, maybe they'll use a tactical nuclear weapon. There's no such thing as a tactical nuclear weapon. They're talking about this as in degrees. It's bullshit. You know what I mean? A tactical nuclear weapon is a nuclear weapon, right? And the thing is that if they use a tactical nuclear weapon, it's going to immediately trigger a domino effect because the other power is going to feel like if they don't use their arsenal, they will lose their arsenal. And that's why this nuclear deterrent is such a powerful thing. Has it made the world more dangerous? Possibly. Possibly, if a madman gets their hands on it. But no one with a rational mind, even Putin, would be so stupid to play that kind of game. And keeping that in mind, the nuclear deterrent has actually kept the world quite peaceful, relatively, outside of America's ventures in everyone else's countries, relatively.
These people had trashed every room, smashed in the windows and bashed in the doors, written on the walls and the floor, Jap's not welcome anymore. And Kenji dropped both of his bags at his sides and just stood outside. He looked at his wife without words to say. She looked back at him, wiping tears away, and said, someday we'll be okay, someday. Now the names have been changed, but the story's true. My family was locked up back in 42. My family was there where it was dark and damp, and they called it an internment camp.
When we first got back from camp, it was pretty bad.
I remember my husband said, oh, we're going to stay till last. Then my husband died before they closed the camp.
Yeah. Great little story over there, right? It sparks up conversation, right? Specifically with that, I actually enjoy talking about World War II. I'm fascinated by that war. I've watched absolutely everything and read a monster amount. I don't know. I'm fascinated by despots and dictators and why. I'm fascinated by their psychology in terms of why would a man be compelled to do such a thing. Like it's crazy to think that that any human can live with himself doing these kind of things. But that's what made World War II so fascinating. And then also with like the battles and strategies and all of that in World War II was also absolutely amazing. I could go on for days with this whole World War II story, but let's leave that for another video because we've already made this one too long. I love you all, man. Please stay safe, please stay healthy. I'll catch you on the next one. Peace.